Hi, my name is Ada Willis, and I'm here to do my presentation assignment. Okay, so in the conflict that I am going to discuss today, some nurses were coming into work and they were fighting over the assignment. The assignment was quote unquote easier than the other assignment, which was harder and had patients that were a little bit sicker. Well, the one nurse was a new grad and the other one had been around the block and was a older, more experienced nurse. They couldn't reach a compromise, which meant that they could not meet in the middle to come up with a resolution, and both nurses were competing, which means essentially that one party pursues what it wants at the expense of the other. So definitely was not a good situation. And the charge nurse had to intervene and was trying to make a compromise, which neither one of them wanted to do. Cooperating and accommodating is similar to compromising in that they both worked together. And the charge nurse came in and attempted to smooth things over, which meant to try to pacify both nurses. And in the end, the charge nurse ended up giving the harder assignment to the older, more experienced nurse and letting the new grad take the assignment that was a little less challenging. But she did say that she wanted the new grad to help the older nurse so that she could gain experience. So I feel that that did pacify the older nurse a little bit because everybody needs help sometimes. In conflict, there was no avoidance, which means basically lack of acknowledgement. They definitely acknowledged that there was a conflict. There was some collaboration because they did have a resolution to the conflict. Conflict management. Before is the preparedness. They want to think about the incentives for both parties. The starting point and the hidden agendas, which why did each nurse want the assignment? The older nurse might have wanted it because she was a little tired, maybe she worked the day before, and the new grad was uncomfortable with the harder assignment because she was afraid, because everyone's been there as a new nurse, they've been afraid. During the management of the conflict, there was composure, communication. The charge nurse was very patient, even though the two parties involved kind of weren't. And they try to avoid destructive negotiations. After, there was restating and recognition, and that they did recognize that the one assignment was harder, and that's why the new nurse was going to help the older nurse, and in turn she was also going to learn some new things. All right, and there's some destructive techniques. I don't think that any of them were involved in this situation. There was no ridiculing, which was used to intimidate others. Well, maybe a little bit because the older nurse did try to intimidate the newer nurse. There was no ambiguous or inappropriate questions, which oh, you've only just graduated, you seem like you've been a nurse for longer, an attempt to distract, from the problem at hand. Flattery is also used to distract and so that one party can get their way. Managing conflict. With nursing and with anything really, teamwork makes the dream work. So we all need to make sure we remember that when we work together. All right, delegation. Today, actually, when I was at work, I had a patient that was having some chest pain. Um, I immediately was told that the patient was having chest pain. I asked my CNA to get a set of vitals, and I grabbed the patient's ordered nitroglycerin tablets. Um, I delegated to the CNA to take the patient's vitals, and I gave them their first dose of the nitroglycerin, and I had them continue taking them because nitroglycerin does lower the blood pressure. I did have to step out to call the doctor, so before I stepped out, I called for another nurse to stay with the patient so that I was able to call the doctor. Now, in this situation, there was the right task. For example, getting vital signs is a right task for the CNA. Right circumstance, meaning I delegated to the nurse to stay with the patient because the patient could not be alone. The right person, meaning that CNAs aren't allowed to assess, and nurses can do that. The right direction communication. I communicated very effectively with the CNA and with the other nurse and with the doctor, and the right level of supervision. There was definitely some supervision going on because the CNAs do essentially work under the RN license or an LPN license. Strategies for successful delegation. Skill, there's definitely skill involved. Education, I was educated what to do on that type of situation when I was in school. And there was not really any planning because you can't really plan in emergencies. Selection, I selected a good CNA and a good nurse to help. There was empowerment. I made them feel like they could do it. There was good communication. There wasn't any deadlines really, and the patient was, of course, being monitored, and CNA was because nurses supervise CNAs. All right, delegation errors. Now, if you underdelegate to somebody, you make them feel like you don't trust them and you think that they're incompetent. And that's not a good feeling. We should all trust each other. You should be able to trust your coworkers. And if you overdelegate, someone might be overwhelmed and they won't be able to get to everything. So you need to be considerate. And improper delegating, that would be like asking a housekeeper to assess when, that's not they don't have the license to do that. Or asking a CNA to assess. Creating a healthy work environment. What is a healthy work environment? A healthy work environment is safe, empowering, and satisfying. Environment would be safe, and the workers would feel empowered and they would be satisfied with their jobs. My present work environment is not a healthy work environment because a lot of times with staffing, I don't feel very safe, and I would like to have more nurses so that I would be adequately able to, care for the patients. What is a healthy, what, it could be a healthy work environment if the staff was more safe and you'd be able to spend a proper amount of time with the patient. You made them feel like they could do a lot better, and not feel, make them feel bad. And job satisfaction, like you leave work at the end of the day feeling good. And an effective leader could be a strong leader that promotes safe staffing, makes the employees feel their work, and give them incentives, make them have a pizza party or something to, make them want. All right. These are my references. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and you have a good night.